Welcome to the Ask the Expert Show with local celebrity hosts Steve-O and Renee. Sit back each week while Steve-O and Renee educate you with live in-studio experts, such as lawyers, doctors, home improvement, and financial experts in their field. Call in and have your questions answered each week at 888-565-1470. Now, here is Steve-O and Renee with today's expert in their field.
No, just Renee, not Steve-O today. Welcome to Ask the Expert Show, where we bring you experts in the field of legal, medical, home improvement, and financial. And with us today is our family law expert, Tina Lewer with Lewer Law. Welcome to the show, Tina.
That's me. How are
She's
you?
busy taking a selfie.
I'm trying to do a
doing?
selfie with the on the air sign, but it's not. Okay, never mind.
Well, tell everybody all about your practice.
Sure. So I practice family law, and when we talk about family law, we're talking about divorces, alimony, child custody, child support, paternity, some domestic violence. We do a lot of modifications of the alimony and child support, but primarily divorces and all those things that encompass that, and then prenups, postnups. So
is that very popular nowadays?
It's becoming. I feel like it's becoming a little more popular, and people know more about those things. But in my opinion, I still think not enough people do them.
They should.
It
makes life a lot easier.
Well, you go into marriage and people don't know the laws and they don't know what it means legally to have a marriage in the state of Florida or in whatever state they're in. And then they also don't know, by virtue of that, what it means when you get a divorce. What's going to happen? You're going to divide up your stuff, and you're going to divide up your assets and your debts, and how it's divided. And so all the things that go into that, I can't tell you how many times people come into my office and I'm giving them the education about what the divorce laws are and how it works, and they're going, what?
State,
how
right?
is
It's
that
different in each state?
Some states are different. So but it's generally, if you're splitting things 50-50, and regardless of title, many times regardless of how it's titled, so a 401k in someone's name that I acquired during the marriage because I worked and I contributed to that 401k and my employer matched it and all that stuff. It's in my name. I did the work. But it's a marital asset if it was acquired during the marriage, and I have to give my spouse 50% of it. They're going, what? No one told me this when I was walking down the aisle. So, prenups are a smart thing.
So pretty much what you earn throughout the marriage is split 50-50.
Correct. Whatever you acquire during the marriage, no matter in whose name, is split 50-50. And there are some exceptions to that, like inheritances. But again, so long as they're kept separate and not commingled with marital funds or put in joint names. So
that's why a prenup is very important.
Yeah, it could be really important. And people always say, oh, but that's for people who have money and you need to have, what if I don't have anything? I'm coming in with nothing. Well, yeah, but generally, people get married young or younger. You may acquire something.
Right.
So it covers that too. So it's a smart thing to do, but I think it's an awkward thing too. It's an awkward topic to bring up, and a lot of
it's
people,
almost saying that you think you're going to get divorced. That's how people
perceive it. That's how people perceive it. It's really just trying to plan for the unknowns and the realities of life. And the sad reality is, it would be lovely. The people that are married 50 and 60 years and their whole lives, beautiful. That's wonderful. But as we see around us, that doesn't always happen.
Right, exactly.
It's actually rare that happens. And whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, but it just is. So what's the smart thing to do?
Well, tell everybody the process of getting a divorce for those that are possibly looking into a divorce or not aware.
Generally, the process is this. Someone, husband, wife, whoever wants to get it going, files a petition for dissolution of marriage. We call it dissolution of marriage in the state of Florida. And the petition is served on the other spouse by a process server. That spouse then has 20 days to file a response. They can file an answer. They can also file a counter petition so that they're also asking for relief. And then from there, that's the pleading stage. And from there, we're doing financial disclosure, exchanging tax returns, bank statements, pay stubs.
And it's a lot of paperwork.
It's a lot of paperwork.
Experience.
Right. And so the purpose of that is so the parties and the attorneys especially know what we can literally lay everything on the table and say, what do we have here? What are we dealing with? What are your assets and debts? And what's the value of things? Are there any assets we need to get appraisals on? We need to value? Or is there a business? Do we need a forensic accountant? And try to figure out, what do we have here to divide? And then we generally, after a financial disclosure, we're trying to set mediation. And at mediation, we're trying to resolve the case. So it's a settlement conference / negotiation. And the goal is to settle the case. That'd be lovely at mediation. We do a lot of those. And if the case settles at mediation or even after mediation, the meat and potatoes part of it, was what I always say, is done. Your main part is done.
So how long thereafter can you be divorced?
Within a few days, actually. It's just a formality. It's for your attorney to set a final hearing. The final hearing, once you have your signed settlement agreement, is literally less than a 5-minute thing. The longest part is probably driving to the courthouse and maybe waiting for the judge, and then you're up there, you're done in a few minutes. If mediation fails or settlement efforts fail, then you're setting a trial before the judge, and the judge you're going to try all your issues, just like on TV, opening statement, closing argument, testimony, evidence, all of it, and the judge is going to make the decisions. So that's the process.
So can you go without using an attorney? Because I hear people say, something, maybe we don't want to spend money on an attorney. We'll go through like a mediator.
Right. You can, of course. No, most people, why would you want to spend money on an attorney to get a divorce?
That.
Of course. But yes, of course you can. And it's, but it's, you got to be careful. You have to be really careful. The mediator, even if the mediator happens to be an attorney, your mediator cannot give you legal advice. So there are mediation companies that are non-lawyers. They're non-lawyer mediators. Some of them are very good. There's some good ones out there. If you have no children and very few assets and not a lot in controversy, sometimes those are right for people, especially if it's a very amicable situation. But generally, if you have assets and there's any dispute, especially if there's an alimony situation, if there's a custody situation, child custody, you really need a lawyer. And you if you have complex assets, you need that legal advice, and you may even need to retain experts during the case. So it can be done, but it's something you have to really be careful about, because I see so many people after the fact that come back and they say, oh, this was, we have a dispute over XYZ issue, and it's, okay, let me see your agreement. Well, it's not in the agreement. Okay, well, how does that happen? And there are just
things. And then
things
do you have an opportunity of going back through the courts or getting an attorney at that point?
At that point, yeah, but it could be, it's not so easy. You don't just reopen a divorce case and fix something that, oops, we left out. It's not that simple. So it could be a major mess, and it actually could wind up costing you more to hire an attorney to fix it later than if you got an attorney to represent you and do it the right way in the first place. So I see that a lot, unfortunately.
How about people that ask, can you use the same attorney?
No. You cannot.
Because I would think that's a conflict of interest.
It's a conflict of interest. Yeah, and even if people are amicable, even if you're getting along and you're trying to resolve it, and of course most people want to resolve it, but even if you're on the same page about everything, you're still entering into a contract with another person. So husband's on one side of that contract, wife is on the other side. They have different rights, different obligations, and
it doesn't always stay amicable.
Right. It doesn't always stay right. Exactly. So, it's a conflict of interest for one attorney to represent both parties, and most attorneys will tell you that they can't do that. So even when I had somebody call me today, and they said, well, my husband went, he were filing for divorce, and he made an appointment with an attorney, and he went to go see that attorney, and he asked me to come with him. And so I went to the attorney's office, and the attorney said, I can't sit in there. He can only represent the husband and not me. And I had to wait in the lobby. And I said, well, that's the right thing.
Right.
You can't,
absolutely.
I don't know why your husband said to, asked you to come with him. So, yes, absolutely. You've got to have two separate attorneys giving their respective clients the right advice.
Now, this is the question I ask you all the time, because obviously I went through a divorce. And once you're separated, what happens with the monies? Because sometimes it takes longer if it's not amicable and people are, fighting as far as the divorce is concerned. So what happens if you're the spouse, say the woman, and you're home with the kids, and he refuses to give you any money?
Well, a couple of things. It's nice when people can agree and do all those things voluntarily.
They don't agree. Usually divorces are not people don't agree throughout divorces.
So when you have a situation where you can't agree and, you need support, let's say for argument, not to be sexist, but let's say it's the husband who's got the money.
Well, typically that's the way it is, unfortunately.
It's statistically, it's true. So, but he, so he's not providing money. He's pulling out the rug from under you, literally. You are going to have to, there's a couple of things. In certain counties, you could have to provide for yourself for a little while, make do, borrow money because you are going to be, for example, in Palm Beach County, we have a rule in Palm Beach County, a local rule, where the courts will require that you go to mediation before you can get in front of a judge to ask for your temporary support order. So you can get an order that the husband has to pay temporary support.
It doesn't happen that quickly.
It doesn't happen that quickly.
Emergency.
Right. And in certain counties will define an emergency as a only a situation where there may be a child may be in physical harm or about to be kidnapped or removed from the jurisdiction. So they limit that. And so generally temporary support is not considered defined as an emergency. So yeah, you've got to figure something out quick. And I usually tell people, if you can get your hand, if that's the situation and there's really someone who's concealing assets or hiding income or just not, he's everything's in his name, you can't get access to it. It may be a situation where you have to figure something out to get yourself through that period of time until you can get into court or at least get into mediation, try to resolve it. And then if you can't get into court,
pre-plan and try to get monies before.
Yeah, it's true.
Unless he just walks out and leaves you.
Yeah, and unfortunately, those are sometimes things that we have to strategize for and we have to plan for. And so it depends on the person you're dealing with and, the personality types that there are
Things
people
get
that will
ugly.
do that a lot.
Typically, they get
ugly. Yeah.
I hate to say that.
Well, when emotion is involved,
exactly.
people get, they get vengeful and they let their emotions control the situation and they may not even be thinking straight. And they may, an attorney may tell them, listen, I usually tell people, if you're providing the support, even without a court order, just keep the status quo. I mean, that's a smart thing to do. Otherwise, you're going to run into motions and it's going to cause litigation, and litigation creates enemies, more than anything. So I try to advise them to do the right thing if they can, where they can. And some people will still just not do that anyway because emotion.
And how about if you have to live in the same house till you're divorced?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you cannot, by law, you can't throw anybody out. Because I've tried.
Yeah,
you can't change the locks. You can't throw them out.
Right.
What happens in that respect if things are getting really ugly within the household? You don't want the kids to see this.
Yeah.
So what do you do in that respect?
You can ask for what's called exclusive use and possession of the marital home. So you can request a court order that you have exclusive use of the home, meaning the other person has to vacate, and you can then change the locks, but you need a court order. So you need to, again, same thing. Usually you go to mediation or, and once you get through mediation, file your motion and get through mediation, and then you set a hearing on that motion. And it's a mini trial. You have to go to court and explain to the judge why it's horrible in the house and what's happening, detrimental to the children.
The children
to see
this.
all the
it's
trauma.
Like War of the Roses in the house.
Absolutely. And then and so in certain situations you can get that. And also the other way would be if there's a restraining order situation, the court obviously by court order will force the other person.
Of course,
correct.
Yes.
That's in the event of domestic violence. But it is hard. Yeah. So absent those two things, you can't force somebody to leave. And sometimes I advise my clients, if you can temporarily go somewhere else and just to keep the peace and maintain your own sanity and mental health.
Because it's not comfortable living under the same roof as somebody that gets served papers. It's very uncomfortable.
It's very hard. Yeah, and a lot of things just get out of control, and it's very unpredictable. And I don't like to do that, especially if it's a particularly contentious relationship. I don't like the parties to be in close proximity to each other. So
absolutely. Okay, let's go to a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with Tina Lewer. We'll be right back.
Lewer Law Offices is proud to be the family law expert on the Ask the Expert show. Attorney Tina Lewer is a board-certified specialist in marital and family law. Attorney Lewer is committed to obtaining the best resolution for your divorce or other family law case by consistently providing skilled representation, expert legal advice, and personal attention. Attorney Lewer has developed an excellent reputation for providing effective divorce and family law representation in Boca Raton and the surrounding communities. Lewer Law Offices offers legal advice and representation in a wide range of family law matters, including divorce, child custody, time sharing and visitation, child support, alimony, complex asset distribution, post-judgment modifications, and paternity actions. For expert representation in all aspects of divorce and family law, contact Attorney Tina Lewer today at 561-544-6861 or visit www.lewertlaw.com.
And we're back here with Lewer with Tina Lewer. Tell everybody where you're located, Tina.
Sure. The office is it's in Boca Raton on the corner of Yamato and Dixie in, I believe they changed it to the Seaman Holtz building, but Yamato Road in Boca Raton.
It's a beautiful building. And your phone number. Give everybody your phone number.
Phone number at the office is 561-544-6861.
And your website, of course.
Our website is www.lewertlaw.com, and Lewer spelled Lewert.
Okay, so the question about assets is the biggest question.
I'm going to try
so
another
how
selfie
are
while you do
assets?
that.
Oh, she's doing selfies right now.
Still doing. Okay.
Don't get
Go
me
ahead,
in the selfie.
Go ahead. I can. Yeah.
Multitask. So dividing assets, how is that determined?
Okay, so generally, like we said before, generally assets acquired during the marriage are going to be split 50-50. There's a presumption of that. Like I said, there are certain exceptions. In inheritance, something we call a non-interspousal gift, which is a gift like for example, your parents give you and only you a condo during the marriage. So there are certain exceptions, and sometimes there are arguments created over those exceptions.
Well, if your name is on the deed, right? I mean,
Right.
his is not.
Right. But then if you have, like, for example, someone, the other spouse, I don't know, helped you remodel the kitchen on that condo, then what happens? So there are arguments to be made that there could be a marital portion of an otherwise non-marital asset. But generally, we divide assets that are acquired during the marriage 50-50. And then we usually look at the value of those assets as of the date of the filing of the petition. So we're looking at bank statements and asset statements and things like that as of that date. That's, again, a general rule. And how it's done could be a million different ways. There's no, so it depends on if you have a house and then you have a 401k and then you have a boat and then you have these other bank accounts and an investment account, who gets what? Well, it depends. We start kind of by talking about, well, who wants the house? Does somebody want the house? Does nobody want the house? Maybe it makes sense to sell it and split the proceeds. If that could be, that's a major asset of the marriage, and the parties really need the money. They're both going to need the money after the divorce.
Or if you're really nice, you let the wife stay there with the kids,
right,
and help her
right,
out so the
right.
kids could grow up in the house.
Yeah, that could,
that's
that's a claim. Actually,
Yeah.
that's a claim. For exclusive use with the children while the children are still minors, so that everybody can kind of stay intact and they don't have to move and switch school districts and all of that. That can be done as sort of that. Then we start talking about some of the incidents of child support, because that can be sort of an element of a piece of support with that. Because if we're trying to keep, say, for example, the wife in the house with the children, there's an element of support there too. So, generally things are divided 50-50, and we try to get it so that everyone's walking away with about 50% of the value of the assets. So you might get the house. The house might be worth $500,000. I have a 401k for $500,000, and they're both equal. And so you keep that, I'll keep that, and then we're even. And that's just a very rough example. But we're trying to even everybody out, and so that we're walking away each with 50%.
How about credit card debt? Like, say you get separated, you move out. Are you still liable? Are you still responsible for that credit card debt thereafter? Like, if say the spouse moved out, you separate till a divorce. The divorce is taking like a year or 2 years, whatever. Sometimes it takes a long time, especially if you have a forensic expert come in.
Yeah.
So what happens with that credit card debt? Are you liable for that credit card debt as well?
The credit card debt is usually same thing, usually determined as of the date of filing of the petition. So if you have $5,000 on a credit card, as when on the date that the petition for divorce is filed, that $5,000 is generally going to be considered marital debt, regardless of whose name it's in, even regardless of what it was spent on. So if you had $5,000 on your credit card and you bought clothes and shoes with it, and the husband had $10,000 on his credit card and he bought, I don't know, leather goods and,
Whips and chains.
Yeah, exactly, whatever he bought with it. Well, it depends. It depends, because if it was for purposes outside the marriage, like if he spent it on his, an affair, for example, or
you have to prove that.
A dating website or
Right.
something.
Oh,
like that.
yeah.
Right. But that's why we look at the credit card statements, and we want to see, what was charged in the last couple of years before the divorce, because sometimes you have a claim for what we call dissipation. He or she dissipated marital assets or marital funds on, purposes outside the marriage is what I like to call it. And then you can say, well, wait a minute, you spent marital funds on that. Half of that was mine. I want my half back. But but generally, if like I always tell people, when you're as far as incurring the debt, you have a credit card just in your name, credit card just in my name. When you're married, it's as though you're one person,
Right?
buying those shoes or buying that purse or whatever it is. So whatever you put on a credit card, again, generally subject to certain exceptions, is going to be marital, and therefore it's going to be part of the distribution of assets and debts. So when we're trying to say, okay, you get this asset, you get that asset, we are also putting debts on that list. You're putting this debt in your column and that debt in your column, and we're trying to make sure everybody's ending up.
Because people get crazy towards the end and a little vindictive.
Yeah.
Okay, not that I'm talking from experience, but I am a little bit.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to depend when, if there were credit card charges after the date that the petition for divorce was filed, then the other person's generally not going to be responsible for that.
Right. Well, after the divorce, of course.
Right.
And how is child support calculated?
There's a formula. There's an equation that we have in Florida. It starts with both parties' net incomes, and then from there we figure out the net incomes. There's a chart that's in the statute, and the Florida legislature has determined, based on, if you have 1 child, 2 children, 3 children, how many children you have, how much the combined net income of the parties is, and there's a certain number, and that's the number that the legislature says it costs you as a couple to raise those children, and then that number is divvied up proportionately. So if you're earning 70% of the income and the spouse is earning 30% of the income, you're going to be responsible for 70% of that number that's in the chart. And then from there, there are other deviations based on how many overnights each party has per year. So overnights out of 365 with the children. So there are deviations for that too.
So say that your husband is a businessman and you have the kids primarily all the time. Do you get more support?
You get more support the more overnights you have. And the reason for that, it makes sense. If you've got the children
of course it
more
does,
of the time, you've got more of what I call the overhead of the child rearing, the meals and all the things that go with, having the children with you more of the time. So the support goes up.
So how about if the spouse says that they're not working, or if they are working, that they're not making that much money? So how do you find out? What happens with that? So you have to start getting forensic accountants in and start looking into that?
Well, it could be. It depends. If they're what we call voluntarily unemployed or voluntarily underemployed, meaning they
doing it on purpose.
Could be working more. They should be working more. There's no reason for them not to, other than to try to basically screw around with support.
Exactly.
Yeah. Then yes, you can. What we do is we actually employ what we call a vocational expert. So the vocational evaluator is a person who has an expertise in figuring out what a person's earning capacity is. And they will come to court and they will give the court their expert opinion on what this person could really earn if they made their best efforts. And they'll actually come to court and they'll say, look, and by the way, Judge, here are 10 jobs that exist, that are job postings, job listings that are out there right now that this person could qualify for and would be likely to get or be a good candidate for these jobs. And here's how much they pay. And based on that, that's how much I think they can earn. So
what do they base their income on? Minimum wage? because I remember in my respect, that's what happened.
Really?
So they based it on minimum wage, which is virtually nothing.
Minimum wage you can usually agree on and stipulate to, and the court may do without any kind of expert. But if you have a vocational expert, they're going to go and they literally sit with the person and they'll ask them for, go back, college transcripts and their resume and their work experience and their job experience.
But isn't that costly?
And they'll do skills testing so that maybe they can do something in an industry that they never even worked in before if they do a little bit of training or a little bit.
Who's paying for that? Who's paying for that?
It depends, but usually the spouse who wants that done pays for
it. Right, exactly.
It's an extra expense. It's an extra expense, but it could be worth it because if you can prove to the court that, for example, I'll do it this way: a wife who says, "I can't work. I never worked. I don't feel like working, and I don't want to work, and I can't."
I've never worked a day in my life.
Yeah,
right.
I'm going to sit here. So, no, if you can prove to the court that she can make an extra $30,000 a year at a job, she can go. I don't know. She can go get a job somewhere and do something and make, let's just say, $30,000. That's $2,500 a month less off of what she's asking for in alimony from you. So, that could be worth it. That could be definitely worth it, especially in a permanent alimony case where you have a long-term marriage and it's going to be a long-term alimony obligation. So it depends. The cost sometimes of an expert could be well worth it to to get a better result for yourself.
So how do you make the determination this based on, for the alimony?
Alimony is a little more complicated than child support.
Is there lifetime alimony? Not anymore.
Well, yeah, in Florida, we still have what we call permanent alimony.
Oh, you do?
But
wow.
what I always explain to people is permanent alimony is never quite permanent, usually, because things change, so it's still modifiable. You can still modify.
Right.
So permanent alimony means, yes, until either party dies or the wife remarries. That's the law. So, or until someone comes in and modifies. So, for example, if the husband says one day, well, I want to retire, I'm older, I'm tired, I can't work anymore or whatever, it's just time for me to retire, he can come file a petition to modify the alimony or terminate it and say, I'm retiring, I'm not going to have the same income, and I want to terminate or lower my alimony obligation. That may happen, and so there are all kinds of things.
Why would the wife get married again if she's getting alimony?
Right.
So, is there any laws if she's moved in with somebody, like she's with somebody else for a while, but she hasn't remarried, as far as alimony is concerned?
There's a law. That it's part of the modification statute that was revised a few years back. Actually, more than 10 years back at this point. But we call it supportive relationship. If the wife is in a supportive relationship with someone new, or I don't want to say wife, the alimony recipient, not to be sexist, because it could be a husband too. But if the wife is in a supportive relationship, meaning she's cohabitating with someone that she's not related to, and you still have to show the financial ties, though. It's not an automatic thing. So if the alimony recipient moves in with someone, it's not an automatic termination. Is
there a time frame involved?
Not.
So I'm saying if she moved in with somebody for a long period of time, is there a time frame?
The longer their relationship, the better. I mean, if she moved in with someone and they've been together 3 months, I would say wait a little while, because that's not. How solid is that,
right.
Or if she it could be a roommate, or it could be, and I have people that come to me that say, well, I think she's moving in with someone. I think someone's there. I can't tell. People hire private investigators to get to the bottom of, is someone else living there?
Right,
because
of course.
they try to hide it because they don't want to lose their alimony. So, but it's a whole reopening of the case. It's a petition for modification, and the supportive relationship cases can be very contentious. And I actually had 2 trials this year just on that issue.
Because why remarry if you're getting the alimony?
Right.
So I'm sure there has to be laws in place to protect the person that's paying the alimony. 30 minutes goes so quick. It's unbelievable.
That's crazy, yeah.
Anyway, give out your address again and your phone number and your website.
Sure. Our office is in Boca Raton, the corner of Yamato and Dixie. It's 301 Yamato. And the website's www.lewertlaw.com, spelled Lewert. Phone number's 561-544-6861.
Listen, we could go on talking about this forever.
We can continue if you want. I'll stay here. Yeah.
Anyway, let's go to commercial break. Thanks so much, Tina.
Thank you.
We'll be back in a few minutes.
Lewer Law Offices is proud to be the family law expert on the Ask the Expert show. Attorney Tina Lewer is a board-certified specialist in marital and family law. Attorney Lewer is committed to obtaining the best resolution for your divorce or other family law case by consistently providing skilled representation, expert legal advice, and personal attention. Attorney Lewer has developed an excellent reputation for providing effective divorce and family law representation in Boca Raton and the surrounding communities. Lewer Law Offices offers legal advice and representation in a wide range of family law matters, including divorce, child custody, time sharing and visitation, child support, alimony, complex asset distribution, post-judgment modifications, and paternity actions. For expert representation in all aspects of divorce and family law, contact Attorney Tina Lewer today at 561-544-6861 or visit www.lewertlaw.com.
Good afternoon. You've got the Ask the Expert show. I'm Steve O without Renee. I've already done a 3-hour talk show this morning. Started at 7 o'clock, and now we have our Ask the Expert show, and I've got 5 shows this weekend.
Whoa.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
That's a lot of talking.
In Miami. Yeah, but maybe that's why we got our big award from New Times. Well, this show for me is so easy to do, and I got to thank everybody because I put this thing now on Twitter. We are going to have a certified family attorney on our show. If you've got a question, because Some people are still at work. I said, just send it to me. All of a sudden, I got